Over the past few weeks, I've been programming a lot of interesting sounds using the Roland Juno DI synthesizer. In this video, I'm going to show you each sound individually, and we'll hook it up with the software editor so you can see what's going on and how the sound is made. This first patch is called Modular Sequence 1, and it's really sort of inspired by the whole early Depeche Mode sound. All the keys are fixed velocity. Everything is fixed as far as it comes to dynamics of sound. But what I've done, I've assigned the filter to react to velocity. So the harder you hit it, the more open the filter becomes. The softer you hit it, the more closed the filter becomes, which when you're sort of doing arpeggios or sort of sequenced bass lines or synth lines, you can get a really nice effect. So simply, this is the effect. So that's sort of full velocity with the filter open. But the lighter you hit it, now let's just take a look at the Juno DI editor and see what this sound is made up of, really, and what's going on. With a single patch on the Juno DI, you've got four partials, sort of typical, traditional Roland standard. Each partial can have a left and a right sample, or basically two samples per partial, which is quite cool. Some of the samples in the ROM list are left and right, or you can just put a totally different sample on the left to a totally different sample on the right and just really thicken the sound up and make it more interesting. So for this particular sound, I've got two partials running with the same waveform on partial 1 and partial 2, and I've just duplicated the waveform on the left and the right just to thicken it up a little bit. So let's just take a look at what options in general are available in the Juno DI editor. So we're just sticking in patch mode for everything you hear and you see today, and then you can obviously multiply that by 16 when you're in performance mode to make a whole performance out of it, whether you're layering, splitting, or just using it as a 16-part multi-timbral synthesizer. So okay, you've got your summary, which is your overview really of the patch, just access to the standard facilities there and controls. Then in your common in structure, I mean, to everybody who's watching this video that are used to the JVs, the XVs, the XPs, it's almost standard to all that anyway. So you've got your structure as well, the routing type for your patch structures as well, your typical monophonic analog feel, which is quite cool. So every single time you hit the note, there's a slightly different pitch. You can really extend that then. It's quite cool for creating those analog-esque sounds. And then your wave generator, which I've just shown you with your four partials, with your samples, or your wave ROM, your PCM, which is all in the list. And you've got some classic 90s samples in here, sort of reminiscent of the JVs and the waveforms. You've got a couple of JD pianos in there, some D50 waveforms, which are pretty cool in there. You've got your pitch envelopes. You've got your time variant filters with the couple of different filter types, which you got listed in there. Then you've got your envelope, obviously, for that partial with that filter, your time variant amplifier, TVA attack, sustain, decay, release. Again, all traditional Roland style. LFO, which is pretty cool. Key and velocity range. So even in a single patch, so you're not actually in performance mode, you can still layer and split these partials or these tones across the key range. So even in single mode, you can still sort of split the keys without utilizing another part, which again is pretty cool. The bit I like is the modulation matrix control, where you can assign almost anything to anything, which, you know, you can take a really plain standard sound, and then assign modulation, for example, to control the LFO pitch depth, the sensitivity, and what partials are actually going to react to it, whether they're going to be inverted. You know, just take a bog standard sound and assign all sorts of different things here just to the modulation. You move that modulation bar and some crazy things will happen. So there's a lot more to the Juno-G than meets the eye. Absolutely. Okay, so that's the first patch. Nothing special there, but when it's sequenced, you can really sort of appreciate what it does there. And again, the next patch, if I just click on read now, this patch is almost, again, identical to the first. Again, using filter through velocity rather than velocity through amplifier and things like that. And this is what that sounds like. Again, using velocity just to open and close that filter. And one trick I like to use in almost all the sounds I create is white noise. I just love white noise. Even if you've got a standard sound and you just opening and closing the filter with a white noise, gives it some edge to it. So let's take all the partials off a second. So we're left with the very first partial, which is just a simple, so with the bottom end cut right off the filter. Then I've doubled that up. And again there you can hear the random pitch depth that I've set, the difference between the first and the second one. And then on tone 4 I've got that long drone. And then some white noise. So that's all what the white noise is doing is this. So this is the white noise on its own. So again, nothing special with that, but when it's all played together. Okay, and the next sound is called modular edge. Typical sort of 70s mini moog sort of sound. Juno-G does a pretty good job at it. Obviously, you know, if we had real analog filters and things like that, but we don't, so we're going to make do with what we got. So again, this is what that sounds like. And again, if you're listening to this in stereo, you can hear all the different partials panned left and right and things like that. And I've used the same sort of thing again. If you look at the wave generator section, bit of white noise stuck in there. We've got just a couple of square waves in there. Nothing special, but again, using that random pitch, which I quite like. Gives it that quirkiness to the sound. The next patch then is called Modular Edge 2, which is again almost identical, but just a bit more bottom end to it. Maybe play bass lines with it. It's totally up to you. So let's just wait for the Juno-G to get that data. All this is running through MIDI, so obviously the transfer rate is traditionally MIDI speed. So this is that patch. Bit more bite to the sound there, and I think I've used a bit of resonance just to kick that in a bit. So I can add the depth to the filter envelope. Again, another quirky sound. This next patch is called JX Days. sort of just a nice 80s electric piano sound, or synthesized electric piano at least anyway. And this is what that sounds like. Okay, let's skip on to another interesting sound, which is called D50 Days. And with this patch, I've tried, rather than, I mean, whenever we look at synthesizers, we always tend to look at the filters and those typical things. But what I've done with the D50 Days patch is just try to utilize those features that you have, like note off. So as soon as you take your finger off the note, an oscillator will kick in. And so just things like that. So adding delay to the wave generators. For example, if you can see on this patch, I've got a lot of tone delay times on 3 of the patches, 3 of the tones anyway. So let's just hear the sound in full first of all. So let's break that sound right down. So we go to tone 1, which is just my typical JV strings. And as you can hear on that, I've got a filter running, which is a bandpass filter, but I've also got the envelope as well. So as it starts, the filter's open, and as time goes on, the filter just reduces down, which just adds a bit more dynamics to the patch. The next one, I've just got a couple of vocal waveforms in there, but these are set to delay as well. So as soon as you press a note, there they come in. So there's a bit of a delay before they kick in. And again, the same with tone 3. I've got just that. And then the interesting one then is on tone 4, I've set this using the tone delay mode. So the waveform will kick in as soon as you press a note, or if you take your fingers off the note, then it'll trigger, which is quite a useful thing. So in this case, that's exactly what it does. So just make sure that's on only. So I'm holding down the notes, those strings are happening, which obviously you can't hear yet. And then just take the fingers off. It just puts that little bit of texture in there, and then again all play together. And again, you know, the effects section on the Juno-G is pretty impressive as well. In patch mode, you've got one patch, multiple effects with your traditional chorus and reverb, and your root-in possibilities as well for that, which, you know, you can get some pretty good results with. And in the majority of patches that I'm showing you today, I'm just using reverb and chorus. There's a couple of patches later on that are utilizing a couple of other things. So that means when you put them into multi-timbral mode, they're going to sound almost the same as they do in patch mode, so you're not going to be losing much. Okay, let's move on to the next patch, Modular Mad. Again, just using sort of an atmospheric early 90s Roland feel to the sound, to the patch that I've made there. Again, using LFOs, using tone delay again, and this is what that sounds like. So there's quite a bit going on there. So let's break that down again. So what we have here, we've got tone 1 that comes on straight away, which is again our sort of atmospheric strings, mixed with the male vocal PCM as well. And then not too long after, I've got a bit of reverse cymbal as well as another vocal sample coming in. So as soon as you play, obviously it's not going to happen. As soon as you take your fingers off the notes, that partial will kick in. But if you listen carefully, I've put a delay on the LFO. So after a few seconds, then the LFO slowly comes to kick in and sends the filters crazy, sends the pitch crazy. So let's do that one again. So the first part to that partial you can hear is just a sort of traditional sample playing nicely, but I've also added a bit of tone pitch envelope to that, so it sort of pitches down, then it comes back up. But by the time that pitch comes back up to its root key, I set the LFOs to kick in and do some crazy things. So let's just go to partial 2 that we were on there. So look, I've set the delay time to this. So if I just reduce this to almost 0, so this isn't being affected whatsoever, this is what you should get. Simple as that. So as you can hear in one speaker, you've got that reverse cymbal. But then I've set the LFO. Look, I get the LFO just to come in straight in time this time. And then obviously you can set the speed. And I set the filter to react to that as well. And if I put the time on there, so it will slowly fade in the modulation then. So it's only a little simple tone going on, but amongst everything else, it works quite well. And then the last tone then, which is set to come off, is just that, nothing more than that. Again, when they're all played together. Okay, there we are. So that's that one. The next one is probably one of my favorites. I call it 12-bit movie. And with this, I'm sort of just using some nice pads, some nice strings. Again, using the wave generator delay on there. And I've got a couple of interesting things in here. So this is what the sound sounds like. So it's quite a sort of movie soundtrack sound, and I think if you listen carefully, you can hear that sort of general MIDI laugh PCM sample, which I think for the past 20 years I've been trying to find a good use for it, and I think I found it. So let's strip this straight down again. So we turn those tones off. So the main element of the sound is just the female vocals on one channel, and then the soprano vox sample, which I love, which you get in the Juno-G on the other sample. Which is fine. And then on tone number 2, or partial number 2, we've just got male vocals to come in, and here they are. So there's a bit of delay on that between the time tone 1 starts and tone 2 starts. And then tone 3, I've got that General MIDI laugh sample. And what I've done there, I've used the pitch envelope again to sort of stretch that sound up and down over time. And I've also got the TVA filters to open and close as well. And again with the LFO on this, we've got that just to react to pitch and to sort of open and close that LFO on the filter. So you get that. And again, this is set, all the velocity's fixed, but the lighter or harder you hit the keys, the filters will open and close. So you never get the same sound again from playing the same notes. It just all depends on what happens at that time. And that is it. So again, all played together. The next sound is called 1981, which is sort of inspired by synthesizers and certain sounds and films from that era. Again, using almost identical process to what you just heard, but a little bit more inspiring, I think is the word. So again, this is it all together. Lots of reverb in that patch. So let's strip that down again. So what we got, looking at the first wave generator to come in, or I think we're working the opposite way around here. So we're working from tone 4 upwards. So this is the very first sound, which is just a digital saw. And that makes use of the filter, just a low pass filter, and again using the filter envelopes. So obviously, as I'm putting my finger on the key, the filter's taking longer and longer and slowly to open up. So we can go like that, and obviously got a lot of release on this. And that's all what that is doing basically. Oh, and another thing I've got is random pan as well for this patch. And then the next tone then, we have, again, it's the same thing, but slightly detuned and slightly panned. So played together. Which, doubling up the sounds, not only obviously makes it thicker, but if you want to try and make a very complex patch, rather than utilize the chorus multiple effect, because with chorus, as I show you, might as well show you now while we're at it. So we've got chorus. You can also use delay. So if you wanted delay, but you still wanted reverb, and in multiple effects, you had something else running like compression, there's no room for chorus. But by doubling up those two partials, if you've got the space, detuning them will give you that chorus effect anyway. So that leaves the actual chorus effect engine to do delay if you want. So that's another useful tip. So those two are then one of the other partials which come in with delay on is, well, let's do that right, is this. So that's the Monsoon General MIDI sample. And again, just using an amp envelope to open and close that. nothing special, but that's all it does. And then again, I got digital saw on tone 1 with a delay doing this. So again, with this I'm using, by the looks of it, tone pitch envelopes just to create that bend in the sound. I'm using LFOs as well. To do that, so when they're all played back together, it creates a nice effect. Okay, and the next patch, we're sort of moving away from all the sort of atmospheric sounds for now. And this is just called LFO lead. And it's going to be using LFOs to re-trigger the filters and a couple of other things. So it's a monophonic analog synth lead. As the sound decays, those filters are again coming in and modulating the sound source. So if we hold the sound, again, the whole key range isn't modulated by velocity for the amplifier. That's fixed, as an analog synth would be, but I'm using velocity to trigger, open and close those filters. And again, I've got white noise in there. And there's not just cut-off frequency that's opening and closing. I've got the resonance as well. So that is inverted to the cut-off. So when the cut-off's full, the resonance is down and vice versa, which creates a cool effect. So let's strip this one back, and everything comes on at once on this one. So we have, so here I've got a JP Jupiter 8 square wave running with the river sample running alongside it, which creates that sort of white noise effect. And the LFO again is modulating this. So if we put the time right up, it takes longer to come in. And the speed as well. And again, just lay it up. And there's my favorite white noise again. So every time you hit it, it's just triggering. And what I've done, I've set the TVF envelope. So as soon as you take a finger off the note, that filter snaps back up again. So it almost bites. So that's quite an interesting sound. And the next one we have then, which is called LFO pads. Very similar to what we just heard, and the same sort of method as well. But it's polyphonic. So again, you can hear in that patch, the LFO's got a lot to play in this again, by opening and closing those filters and resonance on certain partials. Quite harsh. So quite metallic sounding as well. Okay, so The next patch we've got is called 1978, and this sounds sort of inspired by Jean-Michel Jarre's Equinox album, with some of those random oscillators going off in the background and things like that. So let's just have a listen to this. It's got a really, really sub sound on this as well. And that's it. So let's just take a look how this is made. So this first tone we have has got a tone delay on that, which gives us our random LFO oscillator sounds. So let's have a look what we got. If we go to the LFO, and that's all we have is a simple sound like this. If I just stop modulating that, and this, you've got 2 LFOs per partial as well. So just got a simple sound like that that's being modulated. And again, using pitch envelope and things like that. And then the next tone we have, which is a system set, a GR300 saw doubled up, just to give. And using a slight amount of filter envelope on that one. And then we've basically doubled this up slightly, just to make it a little bit thicker. And we'll add that one again. And then we've just added that oscillator sound over the top. And that's that one. Okay, now we're moving on to using waveforms that are inside the Juno-G called OB. That's coming from that era and that sound. This first one is called Pink Lead. No guesses for what that's representing. A sort of shine on you crazy diamond sort of sound. Not identical, but just inspired by. And again, nothing's amazing going on in this patch, apart from just using a touch of filter envelope, just to give that little bite to the beginning of the sound. So that's quite a smooth synth lead, not harsh, nice and smooth. Okay, the next one is just called OB 1980. It's just a nice thick pad of what you would probably expect, really. Now here we go. And again, that's just using, let's take a look at what we got. There's only 2 partials running here. They're both doubled up and tuned up and down as well. And just using a bit of time variant filter envelope just to add that bit of bite, bit of organic to the sound. That's all. And then the next one is sort of a monophonic version of this, but broken down, where in the previous patch that I've shown you, all the partials come on at once. With this one, I've delayed the partials, made it monophonic, and if you sort of play in time with that tone delay, you can get a nice sequence running. So this is just one note. So what we have here are our three partials, and each one is just delayed, that's all. So the first one is, actually let's start the other way around. So we go for the first one that's triggered is this one. And then the second one that's triggered is, and the third one that's triggered, and that's it. So if you sort of get the timing right, so quite a modular sounding patch that. And this next one is called OB 1980B, which is just a continuation of one of the first OB patches that I showed you. Here we go. And again, that is using the TVF filter envelopes just to create that bite, layering up a couple of those OB pad waveforms that are in there, and adding some delay, and with my good friend white noise, well, pink noise actually in this case. So let's just take a look at that again. So here the first partial. And then just doubling that up with a slight bit of tone delay. And on that second partial, you can hear there's a lot more resonance and a lot more filter going on in there. And then we have, and then that's all what I have then on the second one is that pink noise on the note off. So what's happening there, as soon as that note is triggered, the filter envelope then is just open, from that filter is open, it's just closing it slowly. And that is that sound, which sounds like. And again, with the routing of this, I've just set the white noise to go through the reverb, so that sort of stands out a bit more. Okay, and the next one we have, which is called 1980 Mono, which again is a very similar sound, but monophonic. Let's just take a look at this one. Here we go. So that sounds pretty cool. And again, let's strip that one down just to its raw elements. So we have our OB2 pad waveform, which again, over time, the modulation is kicking in and just modulating the pitch slightly. And then we have that doubled up. And again. Once more then. And obviously I've changed the tuning of this. So it gives a nice stereo split with different instruments in the next one. Again, is still sort of sticking with the OB waveforms in there, but just creating a nice clean, pure sounding keys. It's just got a bit of a filter on there and portmanteau and nothing more than that really. So there's not a lot to show you with that patch. So let's just go on to the next one, which is again OB 1980 EP2, which is a variant of the last patch that we had. Here we go. So a lot more overtones with that one. The next one is OB 1980 Pad 1. Be very creative with the name in here. Okay, and here we go. So that is using a lot of the elements that I've shown you through all the other patches, where I'm using different partials, panned hard left and hard right, some tone delay time on there, a lot of resonance as well, and cut off using the TVF filters. So if we just split this particular patch right down to the basics. So we start with the very first one, which is this. Again, that's the OB Pad 2. Just using some filter envelope basically. And then the next one we have, which is delayed, which is quite reminiscent of that 1978 patch that I just showed you. Again, just using a normal waveform and just modulating that, then using pitch envelope going up and down and getting the LFO to modulate all sorts of things in that. So that just comes in to add overtones to the patch. And then we have this. This is almost identical to the first partial, apart from this has got a lot more resonance, a lot more harsher. And that just adding a lot of tones underneath. And then together. So let's just take a quick look at the multiple effects routing for this patch. I don't think there's anything amazing going on. Again, so for the actual patch, multiple effects have used chorus, and then I've used delay in place of where the chorus should be, and a bit of reverb. And that's about it for that one. There are a few patches further on in this video that just show you some other quite cool patches that are available in the multiple effects side of things, not the standard delay and chorus. So this next one is called OB 1980 Pad 2, you guessed it. And this is what that sounds like. So it's almost identical to the first patch without the sort of atmospheric feel to it. A lot more harsher on the filters, and a lot more cleaner, certainly in the mix as well. This one is called, well, guess this one. It's Obi 1980 Pad 3. Okay, and this is that. So almost identical, apart from just adjusting the filter a little bit more on that one, a little bit more harsher. Okay, this next one is called Modular Song, working on that tone delay and that whole modular feel. And this is what it sounds like. So it's just one note. So again, using the 4 partials, put in tone delay time on each partial, panning, again the filters react to velocity, and you can do some nice sequencing with it. Simple as that. And again, this is called modular error. It's just a quirky version of what you've just heard, really. Not really instrumental, but just a nice effect anyway. So with that patch, basically I just took the previous patch, just made it a bit crazy really. Okay, this one is called Gate Synth 1, and again this is just using a couple of waveforms with the LFO gating the sound and a bit of filter going on as well. And what I've done there, I've just simply set the LFO to control all the partials at once, just to open and close the filter as well as the audio. And for the matrix control, I've just set the modulation to control the LFO rate and the cutoff at the same time, and the depth and the reverb send as well. So if we play this, and then move the modulation, so you can do all sorts of things, which are pretty cool with that. And the next patch is called the Gate. Again, using LFO to gate that, to gate all the partials. So with the modulation, again, you can see that it's controlling LFO rate and LFO2 rate and the cutoff and the reverb send as well. Okay, the next patch is called Old Dream, and this is a sort of spooky, nostalgic piano sound using the multiple effects phonograph simulator, which adds dust and scratch and flutter to the mix, which is pretty cool. So I'll enable that now, and just let's hear this patch. So there's a lot going on in that patch. First of all, let's just take a look at this phonograph sound that you can hear going off in the background there. So this is just one of the many multiple effects that are inside the Juno-G that I'm using. You can have signal distortion, add scratches, as you can hear, more dust, more hiss, the flutter as well, and the random pitch, which adds something nice to some analog sounds as well. So let me just turn that off a second, and now we'll just take a look through the whole structure of this. So let's just turn everything off and take a look at the first tone. So we've got that coming in, which is slowly in the background. And then the next one we have just the soprano vox. And again, I'm using the pitch envelope for that, and a bit of LFO, as you can hear at the start. So with the pitch envelope, we can do all sorts of crazy things with that. And then the next one, which we've got, is a couple of piano samples. Drowned in reverb. And again, we've layered that up with another piano. The first one on tone 3 that I've just shown you has got just a slight bit of wave delay on there. This one, partial number 4, so tone 4, is immediately on. But together, and obviously tone 4 is pitched right the way up to give it that high octave sound. So you can create some really interesting sounds with that. And again, I've got something a little bit similar to what I've just shown you there. This is called Old Dream 2. But with this, those oscillators seem to give out all these different pitches and different tones, and like they're self-oscillating as well. So as the resonance is sort of biting and the filter's opening, it creates quite a cool sound. So this is that one. Let's just turn that multiple effects back on a second. Again, that's another quite interesting sound, using those filters, using those, putting those time delays on the oscillators. So as you play a chord, each oscillator will kick in just a couple of milliseconds afterwards and give that sort of a predator feel, and make the patch more interesting. Okay, now we're down to the sort of last two patches in this collection. Just sort of working on some four-man vocal sounds, but this is just sort of like some sort of four-man to pad synth going on. So not very musical, but you know, a good sound effect at least. With this, I've used the patch multiple effects section, the humanizer. So let's just turn that off a second. That's all what that patch is doing. So I'm just pitch bending each oscillator or each partial, a bit of LFO, lots of pitch envelope, just to create that sort of variant pitch, sort of whining sort of sound. And then simply adding that humanizer over the top of this. Gives it a little bit more of a human feel, at least. So let's take a look at some of these settings. So you've got the vowels. And then the rate. And the depth. This is sort of the limit then. And it can turn overdrive on, which does help a little bit, but and then just the EQ gain as well. And again, you can assign modulation to different sources just from this little section as well. So you can assign the modulation with the Juno-G is where it really comes alive. Apart from the amazing waveforms that are in there as well, the modulation sources really take the synth a lot further than what you probably expect. So that's pretty cool. And the last one again is just an effect. It's not really an instrument. And every time you hit the note, a slightly random attempt to speak comes back at you. Let's just take a look at this one. And again, this is using the humanizer and a couple of other things as well. So that's it. You can download this collection online for free. The link will be at the bottom of the video. Any questions, just fire them along. Take care.